Hello and welcome to this week's episode of a series of conversations. And this week I'm in conversation with the lovely Amy Wilkinson. Hello, Amy.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Oh, you're very welcome. So, Amy Wilkinson, podcaster, coach, all-round good egg. Tell me, where did she begin? What did you want to be when you were at school?
Well, it's interesting because I wanted to be a chef.
Oh.
And because I was always interested in food from quite a young age, loved home economics, and I cooked from a very young age. I was the queen of spag bol at 11 kind of thing. And I was always really, really interested in food. And so I was like, instantly just wanted to be a chef. And it was kind of, you're talking the 80s, we didn't have celebrity chefs like we have now, but it's what I wanted to do. And my parents at the time were like, not sure that's going to pay you enough. And I'm not sure you're going to really like the hours and all of that sort of stuff. So I didn't end up being a chef, really. So
can I ask you, do you wish you were a chef?
No.
That's the right answer.
I've always worked in food, and I did. It's funny because at a later stage, I did then end up training to be a chef in night school, just in my own time. Work had paid for it, but so I kind of scratched that itch in another way, like the culinary scratch, and obviously it's something that you can do as a passion, as a hobby. So it's fine. So I decided no, I wasn't going to be a chef, but I definitely wanted to work in food. So I went and did a food science degree, and I think in hindsight, when I look back, I just did that because I went to a girls' school that really pushed the sciences. So I knew I wanted to do food and I'll do science. It was totally, all of those influences from outside telling me what I needed to do.
You were funneled into it rather than choosing it.
Yeah. And I had no clue what the food industry really meant, to be honest. So I did a food science degree, got on a graduate scheme, technical graduate. And I did really well in that job. And I'm going
to have to ask you because I don't know what a technical graduate is in the food industry. What does that mean?
So I mean, oh God, when I think back, so it was the year 2000. I graduated and I worked, my first job, it's really, really glamorous there. I worked in a sausage factory.
Oh, fantastic. I think technical.
And, my job was making sure there was technical compliance and all of that stuff going on. And I don't know, it was 2000 or 2001, but that's when swine flu hit. So, in technical, you're dealing with all of that sort of stuff, like, making sure you've got all the traceability in place and, making sure we knew where, if we had pigs that had swine flu in our sausages, really, really glamorous stuff. And it wasn't really glamorous enough for me, if I'm honest. And I then moved into, I've worked in all sorts of random factories. And it's so funny, isn't it? Because when, my whole world's been the food industry for over 20 years now, and a lot of my friends work in food. So I just talk about it like it's like everyday stuff. And people are like, what? They have factories that do that. I worked in a sandwich factory, which is, for people that work in the food industry, it's like the fastest moving thing ever. You make a sandwich, it's got to be on shelf and it eats within 3 days. It's like, we're talking fast moving consumer goods kind of thing. So really, really high stress environment.
Sandwiches for like supermarkets and that kind of thing?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah. So packaged,
actually occurred to me that they would be made in a factory.
Millions and millions of them made in a factory every day. And, my job was taking a chef that I'd wanted to be, was in the kitchen coming up with the concepts of, what flavour mayonnaise it was going to have in it or whatever. And my job was to scale it up into a factory where you could make tens of thousands or millions a day. So I was involved in things, they used to be in little plastic things and now they're in cardboard things. There's so much that goes into those sorts of changes that, like, as Joe blogs, we just have no clue about. But
you've just reminded
stuff I got involved in.
Of something years and years ago, like 20 years ago, more than. I was pregnant and I worked for myself. I'd stopped doing my work and I was bored. And so I went and did some temping. My husband thought I was mental. I was like, no. And I went and temped at a Dairy Crest. They don't even exist anymore.
Yeah.
And on my phone, I was doing admin and reception and what have you, just to be with people because I was bored. And on my first day, they said, would you like to have a look around the factory? And I was like, oh, it's like through the round window on Play School, isn't it? I was like, yes, I'd like to look around the factory. Fantastic. And we got to the bit where they were packaging cottage cheese. And this was an incredible...
The pox going like this.
Yes, this Asda Smart Price. And it was Asda Smart Price cottage cheese. And then the machine stopped. They took the Asda Smart Price packaging off. They put the high class, I'm not even going to say the name of the organisation, very expensive high class top of the range packaging onto the same thing and then carried on. And so to this day I go, I'll eat home brand because I absolutely know it's the same stuff because I saw it packaged. I was really, really horrified at the time, and it was the brand of, and he said to me the difference is it's a waxed carton. It's like a waxed tub with a fancy lid rather than the cheap shit thing with the plastic. I was like, but that's from this fancy shop that I don't shop in because it's too expensive. And that's Asda Smart Price. And he went, yeah, I know. I was like,
yeah. That goes on. That does go. It goes on less now because I think a lot of the supermarkets, you know, like to make you have little tweaks to recipes and that sort of thing. But you know, it does still exist. Yeah, there's a lot of, you know, entry level stuff that is as good as the next price tier up. I'm exactly the same. I'm like, yeah, just buy the cheap one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, from that moment on, and everybody's go, oh no, don't get that. I was like, no, I've seen it. I'm telling you, that's the one we're having.
Although I would say at this point, having worked in a sausage factory, don't buy cheap sausages. that does have different stuff in it.
Yeah, okay. My dad used to say it had the sweepings off the floor.
Yeah.
Bless him. Anyway.
Worse than that. Anyway.
Let's not go there. Moving on.
So I don't know how we've ended up.
You're in a sandwich factory.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, I won't bore you with every like individual detail of every job I've ever done, but from that,
really interesting.
Yeah, and I guess at that point, so I also ran a line of people. Is that the right word? There was a managed the line of people, so people literally, you know, splodging on mayo and spreading it on and that sort of thing. So that was my first exposure to line management, really. And when I first started to get interested in developing people, so it was quite early on in my career, you know, early 20s. And it was hard, you know, it was temporary staff, there was a lot of different languages. I was properly thrown in at the deep end. Quickly decided I didn't want to work in production because it wasn't the people management that I didn't like, it was the getting up at 6 o'clock and putting white wellies and a hairnet on that I didn't like. So I ended up, the majority of my career ended up working in new product development. So I did get to be the chef in some ways, a bit more technical than that, but that's when I did the chef training because I wanted that kind of culinary knowledge, even though at the time I was developing coleslaw, has 4 ingredients, but we did start to do more exciting things like launch things like couscous and stuff like that. And, you know, that again, that's quite a long time, you know, it's probably 20 years ago now. Yeah, so I worked in product development for a long time, and product development takes a lot of people. Another thing that people that don't work in the food industry have no clue about, like the project management of taking a coleslaw from a recipe with 4 ingredients to an end product that ends on the shelf actually takes quite a lot. You know, there's the packaging to think about, there's all the ingredient sourcing, how you cut it up, how you test the shelf life of it, you know, all of that stuff, and it all involves people. So I ended up in a senior management role, looking after a lot of people and across different sites as well. So remote working, quite a long time ago, before remote working was a thing, really. So I spent a lot of time travelling up and down the A1. So I had sites in Newcastle and Corby, and, you know, it was like, ugh. But, you know, got this love for working with people and developing those people, and kind of didn't even know at that stage that I was coaching them, but I was coaching them. And then I also worked in sales roles. So again, in a sales role, you're kind of starting to understand the psychology. You know, I did lots of stuff around negotiating, understanding the person on the other side. So that was that was kind of much more presenting into retailers, so the big supermarkets, building relationships up with the buyers and the supply chain teams. And then at that point, when I was in this commercial role, it was really, really quite stressful. I was working, so it's like going around the supermarket now. I was working in prepared fruit at the time. So, you know, like little pots of cut up fruit, bits of pineapple or watermelon or whatever. And that's a whole different ball game, because you can't control what happens in, you know, the country that it's being grown, and then you've got the shipping to worry about. You know, there's so many things out of your control, and it was stressful. So I got to a point where, and I won a big load of business. So I was like properly in that high, and like, you know, like winning at life. I've got this new business. I was getting married. I was moving house, and it was like stress, 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 stress. I thought it was all like healthy stress. This is healthy stress. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. Until one day it wasn't fine anymore, and the stress just got too much, and I literally couldn't get out of bed one day, like physically couldn't lift my limbs. You can hear in my voice when I talk about it, it's still a bit, and this is 10 years ago. And it took me a long time, you know, I probably battled through, it took me a few weeks to be able to get up and all of that sort of stuff. And it was a physical burnout as well as a mental burnout. Like my body physically gave up. And, you know, I was having to crawl to go to the toilet. You know, it was proper, you know, I was on this massive high, and then all of a sudden I was on this massive low. A few months before my wedding, you know, don't know how I got through my wedding. Plus, I literally had spray on makeup because I was like bags under the eyes and stuff like that. And I had 18 months of kind of trying to push through, and then ending back up in bed, that sort of thing. And one of my lowest points that I remember, and it was just before I actually then decided to take some time out from work, was I was going down to Sainsbury's head office in London, and I had to spend the day before in bed to prepare. All right?
The door just opened itself. It's all right.
A ghost has come in.
Yeah. So I'm fine. I'm obviously jumpy today for some reason. Go on, you're on your way to Sainsbury's.
Yeah, so I then went down to Sainsbury's, and I could plaster on, you know, literally plaster on the makeup, and the adrenaline would get me through the meeting. And nobody in the meeting had any clue that there was anything wrong with me. I just had this mask the whole time. And when I came out of the meeting, I remember getting in a black cab, because I had to get special dispensation from work to not get the tube. I was allowed to get a cab. And I had to lie down in the back of the cab because I was so exhausted from an hour's meeting. And I just thought, this is ridiculous. Enough is enough. And I had a supportive line manager at the time, and she just kind of said, look, have a week off. Don't take it as holiday. Just have a week off and just assess what you want in life. And I ended up taking 3 months off work. And at that point, that's when I found coaching. So it was a health coach at the time. So it was very much focused on the physical health, you know, putting the right things in my body, getting back to exercising, that sort of thing. But it was the power of coaching and that time and space talking to somebody that was just amazing. So that was kind of my first experience of coaching. And then it's funny because when I look back now, I remember her saying to me at the time, you'd make a blooming brilliant coach. And I was like, I wasn't ready, you know, I wasn't ready then. And the ironic thing is, she's no longer a coach, but she is a client of mine.
That's
now. And we've gone all the way around, and it's great. That's lovely. That's lovely in itself. So yeah, so that was kind of it was a low point, and you know, I took 3 months off work, and I did return to the food industry. It's not that I kind of burnt out and I just was like, oh, I'm just going to go and do something else. I was determined I was going to get back into it. And I went into a more marketing role, so it wasn't as stressful as the commercial kind of selling role, getting 2 o'clock in the morning phone calls, but it was still kind of looking at how to market products to customers and understand what the right products were to be on shelf. And I did that for another 6-7 years. And in that time, I kind of worked my way back up into senior leadership roles, had a team, became the unofficial coach for a team of 40 marketeers. I was always the go-to to facilitate all the training and that sort of thing. And actually at one, when I was coming back from maternity leave from having my daughter, who's now 3, they were potentially going to create a role that was effectively a coach and mentoring role. But then there was a restructure and that didn't happen. So yeah, and then COVID happened. And I had another one of those moments where I had a bit of time out from work. So I was furloughed at the start of the first lockdown, which was a relief, to be honest, because I had a 2-year-old. Just could not juggle.
No,
I don't know.
no.
I like, hats off to everybody that has managed to juggle work and that, because I couldn't.
No, I don't know how anyone's done it. One of my daughters, I would have been able to sit her down and say, you stay there and mummy will be back in several hours after I finish work. The other one, the moment I left the room, she was like glued to my side. If I picked the phone up, she wanted to talk to me. So absolutely, yeah. I don't know how people do it. I really don't know how people do it.
No. So I always say, like, it gave me a bit of time and space. It gave me time and space from work. It didn't give me time and space in general. But, you know, it just made me reassess everything. You know, I feel like a lockdown cliche. But you know, it'd always been my long-term plan to do something around coaching, facilitation, that sort of thing. And I just thought the time is now, the time is right. And I knew there'd be a restructure, because anybody that works in the food industry knows that restructures happen every 18 months in the big organisations. And I just took the opportunity to take redundancy and set myself up. So that's what I did.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. Good for you. Good for you. So where did the podcast come in then?
Oh, that's quite random. Yeah. So it came in, it was about the same time I found you as well, Sarah. So I kind of I'd done my training, I'd done my hours, you know, I'd got my qualification and everything. And I was you know, I'd had a few clients, but I was like, I need to start networking, you know, and I'd done the, I'm going to completely resist working in the industry that I've worked in. I went through that curve that a lot of people go through, and then realised actually I can really help these people and I can make a difference.
Mad not to, yeah. Absolutely.
So the first person that I thought, I wrote a list of people I like need to get back in touch with that I haven't spoken to, and I got in touch with my friend Lucy Rager, who we'd worked together. I'd been her first boss actually 17 years ago, and she's one of those people, you know, that always pops up, you know, like you see along the way. And the last time I'd seen her was her wedding, which was 6 or 7 years ago, but we'd kind of stayed in touch via social media. And she's a food industry consultant. So she'd gone through a similar kind of story to me, in that she'd set up her own brand and it failed, and she had health issues as a result. You know, we've got similar stories, but mine was employed and hers was self-employed. And she was the first person I phoned, and we just were like, oh my God, I haven't spoken to you for ages. And then had a really good chat, really like put the worlds to rights about the food industry. And later that night she sent me a WhatsApp and just said, you know, we've got so much to talk about on this, we should just start a podcast. And I was like, yeah, okay then. And we're both those sorts of people that are just like, let's just get on with it. So within like 12 hours I've written a framework of the pillars of content that we're going to talk about. You know, she's great at ideas, I'm great at kind of distilling that, the detail. And we just kind of were like, if we don't just get on with it. And we employed somebody to help us like set it up and edit the episodes and stuff, because we knew that those barriers would stop us. So we were like, we will invest a little bit of money in this. And yeah, we just got on and launched it, and you know, it's doing really well. You know, I get messages virtually every day from people that have listened to an episode and feel seen. You know, they feel heard, they know that we understand what they're going through. So yeah, so it's very focused on what the perils of working in food are. So.
Absolutely. So I was going to say to you, well, should I say, I would normally say, but it's become increasingly obvious. So who is your ideal client? But I know who your ideal client is. She is that burnt out manager
Yeah, yeah. So it's women in the food industry, and it's not necessarily. It's often people that are feeling like they're on their way to burnout. So it's women in particular that feel like their voice is no longer heard, you know, that have got to a point in their career where it's just started to stagnate a little bit because they are, you know, they've lost the ability to speak up in meetings as much. They're just trying to juggle everything. And I really help them with the getting, you know, helping to sort out that juggle, you know, because that's an underlying reason, but also help them to find their voice again and to speak up again and not be afraid to, because food industry is massively male dominated.
Yeah, male dominated industry,
yeah. So yeah, my ideal client is me 10 years ago, although not quite 10 years ago in terms of age, but you know, it's that midway in her career and really starting to struggle with how tough it is. You know, it's a rewarding industry, but flipping heck, it's tough.
It takes its pound of flesh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And so what does the future hold?
Well, so I've been doing lots and lots of one-to-one work up till now. The future is hopefully holding more corporate work. So I've
Hopefully.
No, it will be, Sarah. Sorry, it will be. It already is, because I've been working with actually one of the large manufacturers to help, so not necessarily just women, but their new product development team, which is 80% women, with things around building their confidence, being able to influence better in meetings, because all of those things kind of link back to this not feeling as overwhelmed, and also workshops around stress and resilience. You know, I can tell my story, I can share what I've learned. So, you know, that's an extension of the coaching. It involves coaching, but there's a little bit of training in there.
It's a rare coach that, I mean, they do exist, but it's a rare coach that only does coaching, you know, especially, well, on a self-employed basis. You know, those of us that have our own businesses, we usually have other kind of training or consulting or what have you in there somewhere, but the coaching is where our hearts are.
Yeah. And the rest of the future, I think, you know, it's unfolding. You know, I'm somebody that's quite happy to take the twists and turns, but I'm definitely, with your help, Sarah, have found my voice in the industry on LinkedIn, and you know, it's getting noticed. I was on somebody else's podcast this morning. I've been asked to talk at a food specific careers fair, you know, and I'm building up that network. So the opportunities that I can see that are going to come my way, because there is a real, there's a feeling that there's a real need for change within the industry.
Yeah. So can I ask you one question that's kind of about our relationship? How does a woman who is running a marketing department end up talking to the Coaching Revolution about having help with with marketing a coaching business?
Well, I think I remember when I first spoke to you, I had this massive frustration because, you know, like, I had worked in marketing for 6 to 7 years, but marketing a product on a supermarket shelf with the help of a supermarket and all of their advertising and all of their influence is very, very different to marketing yourself. So I understood the principles, you know, the principles of what you teach. You know, I get that I need to be, you know, identify who my client is, what their problem is, how I'm going to fix it, all of those things. But to relate that back, I think there was the difficulty of it being service-based, something I'd never done, but also just that, I think, particularly as a woman, you know, blowing your own trumpet.
It's that visible bit, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do I raise my head above the parapet without getting it shot off?
Yeah, and yes. So it was all about that. And what it has helped me is kind of see my strengths and not be afraid to do that, and kind of almost have your team of cheerleaders helping me to do that.
Yeah.
Because it's tough. But yeah,
it makes a difference, doesn't it, having those cheerleaders? It absolutely makes a difference.
And I think the other thing that I thought back then was, you know, I was a generalist in marketing, and if I needed specialist help then, so, you know, we had a pizza brand that needed you know, we need to do things, you know, like around the Euros, there would be special promotions or something like that, I would get a PR agency in to help with that stuff because I wasn't a specialist in that. So it's exactly the same thing. It's like recognizing quite early on that I could try and do this myself, but it's going to take me a few years to kind of get the hang of it, or I could get an expert in to help. And I'm very pleased that I got the expert in to help.
I'm very pleased you did too. It's lovely to have you as part of our community. And Amy, we've been chatting for half an hour.
I know, I can talk, can't I?
It's hugely interesting. It's hugely interesting. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.